Let's talk to Talk's international editor, Isabel Oakeshott, at an unusual time, but good to have you on board, Isabel.
Well, I've spent most of today getting back to London from the UAE, and as I land and my phone lights up with all these images of an absolutely broken-looking Rachel Reeves in Prime Minister's questions, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, on a human level, you know, my immediate reaction was to feel, I don't think you and I are going to agree on this, but on a human level, I actually immediately felt really sorry for her.
Hang on, Isabel, I'm in trouble with the audience for saying exactly what you just said. My take on it is this. Look, if I have to see a woman cry, Rachel Reeves will do. But I'm a bloke. Yeah. I hate to see a woman cry. And on a human level, I felt very, very sorry for her. But then again, if she's crying for the state the country's in, for what's happened to her career, what's happened to the economy, then it's hard to have too much sympathy for her. But I never like to see somebody so broken. But you know, yeah. So just to correct you, I actually am on the same side of you. Okay. I feel sympathy.
My take on this is I don't believe that it's a personal matter.
Nor do I.
Crying is a personal matter. You know, no woman, no man wants to cry in public under any circumstances, least of all on the front bench sitting next to the Prime Minister, looking like she did. Absolutely terrible. She looks like she's had no sleep. And I'm struck by the contrast in the body language of Angela Rayner, who looks fantastic at this point. She's absolutely in her prime, in her pomp, and looks as if she is, you know, in charge of all she surveys. And I thought that image of the Prime Minister, a broken Prime Minister, I mean, he's so damaged, and this weeping Chancellor, and then next to them you've got Angela Rayner, who's almost smirking. I mean, I've watched it really closely. She thinks she's going to inherit the crown, and I'm not sure that she's wrong about that, though whether it's a crown anyone's going to want to wear by the time it's ready for her is another question. But this is one hell of a moment. Whatever
yes, it is. Yeah.
Reeves was crying about, it is one of those moments that is going to become symbolic of this government's absolutely catastrophic first year. I don't think it's recoverable for either Keir Starmer or his Chancellor. And I think the fiasco that took place yesterday over the welfare bill points to a party that is so at war within the parliamentary party between those on the hard left that simply will not accept that you can't have an ever ballooning welfare state without having some way of paying for it, and those on the slightly more sensible wing of the party who just about grasp that something's got to give. And what yesterday showed is that the left of the party are just not going to ever accept any spending cuts, and we all know what that means for the rest of us.
That means definite tax hikes coming our way soon. Now, what happened last night? I mean, those were remarkable scenes in themselves. I'm told from a good source that the final climb down. So what we went to in the last few days, we're going to make savings of £5 billion on our £300 billion welfare bill. We need to do this for the sake of the economy, otherwise the country could be facing bankruptcy. Everybody knows that £5 billion was never going to be enough. We need a lot more than that. Probably 10, 20 would be better. But anyway, £5 billion. In the last 3 days, that $5 billion by yesterday was down to $2 billion. By the evening, as they were getting towards the vote, it was down to less than $1 billion. And the final climb down, absurdly, meant that we now will not be saving a single penny, but in fact our welfare bill will go up by £100 million. That final capitulation, I'm told, Starmer did not tell Rachel Reeves or Liz Kendall about. He kept them in the dark. I'm also told that this morning, before PMQs, that the Chancellor, undermined, demoralised, thinking, what can I do now, had a massive row with the Prime Minister, and that could explain her distraught appearance in the Commons. Either way, forget the fact that she's crying. We as a nation have a lot to cry about. After what's happened in the last 24 hours. We desperately needed to make savings on our welfare bill, our £300 billion welfare bill, and we've ended up adding £100 million to it. That is a catastrophe.
It is a complete and utter calamity. It's a political calamity because it shows that we've got a government that is just too weak to do anything of the serious things that need to be done. And it's an economic calamity, and you can hardly blame Rachel Reeves for being utterly exasperated. I think Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the opposition, was unusually good today.
Yes, she was, I agree.
I was reluctantly quite impressed because I think she's been a huge disappointment. But I think she did well at Prime Minister's questions today. And I think it was her that remarked that she's never before seen, and neither have I, a government bill being brought before the House. The whole point of the bill was to cut spending, and it's ended up adding to the final bill. I mean, that's extraordinary, isn't it? The whole point of the bill was actually to cut the welfare state, and it's ended up
they added to it. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it proves that our Prime Minister is a straw man. You know, he completely buckled here, capitulated right up to the end. In fact, did exactly what those left-wing 130 rebel backbenchers told him to do. They've now got him in their pocket, and they know it. They're going to run the country from now on, because what they said to him during this was, because there was lots of talk, right? You rebels, if you vote against the government, we're going to remove the whip from you. You'll never get a government post, or never get a ministerial post or anything like that. And they turned around and said, okay, you want to take the whip away from 130 of your MPs? Yeah. You go right ahead. And of course he couldn't do that. They've got him now. But to go back to Rachel sobbing, this was an interesting, fascinating dynamic. Now, because of last night's vote, and because the world, the economic markets, could see that Britain, the Bank of Britain, is in a massive state of disrepair, to say the least. The markets were already falling. So the pound was plunging, the stock market was plunging, the bond markets were plunging. And do you know when those plunging graph figures went like that? When they suddenly went, they were going down, and then they suddenly went like that. Do you know when they went like that? The moment she was seen crying in the Commons. When the world saw her sobbing, they thought, my God, that's the Chancellor of the Exchequer. This economy is in big trouble.
Yes, and it's a confidence thing. You know, all markets are. That's exactly what they are influenced by. It's confidence. And how can you have confidence in the British economy if the person who runs it is looking completely crushed, is looking defeated, is sitting there on that most public of platforms crying her eyes out? And I'm afraid that image will go all around the world, and it is the last image that the UK needs right now. You know, it's the last photographic image that we want people around the world to be seeing of our country. Already, you know, we're not looking in great shape, are we? What they see and hear about is the crime on the streets of London in particular, although it's hardly restricted to London, but that's what overseas people talking about. They hear about things like the surrender of the Chagos Islands, and they hear about the migrant crossings. And now we've got a weeping chancellor to add to that terrible mix. And it's a disaster. I mean, no other way of putting it, really. You can't I don't think you can overstate the symbolic significance of this moment.
And everybody knows that this government, the Prime Minister's authority is shot. You've got a sobbing Chancellor, and going forward, you know, this Prime Minister no longer has any authority at all. And I feel like kind of bad about watching a woman cry, then being told, well, she's got this personal, it's a private issue, and me going, You liars, you're lying. You're lying. I feel sort of bad about that, but you agree with me as well. You don't believe Labour. We are justified in our doubts because this party, this Prime Minister, have made it almost a policy to lie their way out of any trouble. They have lied and lied and lied. The Prime Minister is a proven liar on many, many occasions. So when, conveniently, the Labour Party, the Labour government turn around and say to us, well, you know, it's not about the economy, it's a private issue, you know, and you wouldn't expect us to tell us what that private issue is. No, I wouldn't, because I think you're lying. I don't think it is a personal issue. She's crying for her career. She's crying for what's happened to the economy. She's crying because the Prime Minister has left her in a terrible state. He has completely undermined his Chancellor. That's why she's crying. But as I say, if we're wrong, and there is indeed a personal reason for this, you know, I apologise, but I don't, you know, I'm going to give it 99% they're lying about this, maybe 1% it's true.
Well, let me tell you why I feel that it's not a personal matter. Number one, if it was something really awful, and here's hoping it wasn't, you know, perhaps a bereavement or something, and you knew you were right on the edge, you know, you were feeling weepy, you wouldn't come in to Prime Minister's questions under those circumstances. But number two, having worked in Westminster for many years, I was part of the lobby of political journalists. I know how this works. And if it genuinely was a personal matter, then the people around Rachel Reeves would have let that be known. They might not have said that you can't be quoted or whatever, but they would have briefed political journalists that something awful had happened. You know, even if it was a pet dying or something, you know, that can easily make the most hardened of us feel weepy if we've had a bad day anyway. But they would have let it be known what was up. And instead, even if it was a personal matter, the fact that the people around Rachel Reeves, including, for example, her female cabinet colleagues in particular, have allowed this story to run that it isn't something personal, shows just how vulnerable she is. But I'm not buying it. You know, political journalists would have been told, and I tell you, if it had been something like a family member very ill or whatever, you know, these days, the way that we operate is rather different, and there would have been a lot of respectful distance given, and I think it would have completely changed the way it's been reported. It's way too late now to start briefing that it was a personal matter.
Yeah, it's a really, really good point. Before we go to break, I mean, she's been on resignation watch all day. I suspect, it's sheer speculation, that this confrontation she clearly had with the Prime Minister this morning probably revolved around her intention to resign, him saying, well, if you do that, you bring down the government, all that kind of stuff. So, but how long do you think, I mean, she's still on resignation watch. I mean, do you think she will go fairly soon? And how much longer can Starmer go on like this? You know, the ringleader in a circus of catastrophe.
Well, I mean, again, looking at Angela Rayner's body language, you know, I think Angela Rayner thinks that she's going to be taking over sooner rather than later. But it is difficult to get rid of Labour leaders. It's nowhere near as sort of easy as it is, and as we've seen in the Tory party. And if Starmer were just to sack his Chancellor, I don't think that really works, because the two of them are sort of bound together inextricably. So, I mean, it's hard to see her presenting the next budget, but I'm afraid she probably will. And she is a tough cookie. You know, what we saw of her today.
Not today, she wasn't.
That's unusual, isn't it, Kev? I mean, time and again, I've been quite struck, actually, by how able she is to sound authoritative, to sound like she knows what she's talking about, to put a positive gloss on, frankly, disastrous economic indices. So I think it's altogether possible that she will pull herself together. Starmer's going to have to back her more publicly. I mean, he really hung her out to dry in Prime Minister's questions today, because he was asked directly by Kemi Badenoch, you know, will she still be in the job at the next election? He just didn't answer. Well, we all know
that's right.
That means no. And it was right at the very tail end of the session that he finally managed to say something a little bit nice about her. But I think the two of them probably limp on. for another 9 months, probably another year, actually. But look, we're in quite unusual territory here. It's tremendously hard to predict.
I just think that they are failing so epically on so many levels. I'm just wondering if they can stagger on. Starmer is just, really on the brink, if you ask me.
I don't think he feels it, though, Kev. That's the weird thing. I think this guy is so bloodless, so completely empty, such a completely detached individual, that he doesn't understand the broiling anger up and down the country and the complete dysfunction within his own parliamentary party. I mean, he's constantly abroad, isn't he? So perhaps that's why he so dismally fails to read the room. And I mean the small room that is the bunker of number 10, but the parliamentary party, and then the room as in the whole nation's mood. And let's not forget, we haven't mentioned this, and maybe we will before the end of my slot here. The migrants just keep pouring across the channel.
That's I'm saving that till after the break. We've got some real stuff to talk about there. But in football, when you have a manager and the team's not playing very well, and there's much speculation that the manager might get the sack. Before they get the sack, there is the traditional statement from the directors of the club. The directors have full confidence in the manager. That is usually followed within about 3 hours by their dismissal. And I'm just wondering when Keir Starmer reluctantly and rather tardily said that Rachel Reeves has his full support, that might be the final nail in her coffin. I suspect if anything happens here, she will go, she will quit. He certainly won't fire her. And if she does, if she quits, man, that is going to leave him high and dry. Even he will begin to realise he's in deep, deep trouble, and he already is. And we'll talk about that other source of his deep, deep trouble after the break, and that is, of course, the spiralling migrant crisis. That next, stay tuned.